are homeless, can't put food on the table. Yes, I have compassion for the illegals here, but we've got people all over the world that want to come here to work. There is no way that we can employ everybody. You have to make sure that those here that are working are legally.
Washington Journal airs every morning live at 7 Eastern. We're going back to the House now for a vote on the FISA electronic surveillance law and a couple other bills.
H.R. 3857, H.R. 5865. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on passage of H.R. 5949, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 463, H.R. 5949, a bill to extend the FISA Amendments Act of 2008 for 5 years.
The question is on passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. 15-minute vote.
Members of Congress today issued statements reacting to the assassinations of the 4 American diplomats who were murdered in Libya yesterday, including U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens. Later in this vote, we'll see what President Obama had to say about it. Also, GOP presidential candidate Mitt Romney from today, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But first, a little bit about what the House is doing right now. Members are voting on extending a 2008 surveillance law that expires at the end of the year and allows electronic surveillance of foreign targets, including those communicating with people in the U.S., without individual court orders. Here's more from a Capitol Hill reporter.
Bloomberg News is reporting on that. Joining us from Capitol Hill, with so little time before lawmakers leave town again, why is this FISA renewal getting such valuable debate time?
Well, the current law expires at the end of December, and so members of Congress want to be able to get a reauthorization through, and the House is taking it up today. Essentially, the bill would renew the government's authority to conduct electronic surveillance on foreign terrorists abroad, even if that communication involves U.S. citizens. And that's one of the main sticking points in terms of objections, how much authority the government should have to do electronic surveillance on the communications of U.S. citizens.
Is the entire law being renewed or just certain parts?
What's being renewed is a section that would explicitly authorize the government to conduct electronic surveillance without warrants. This was passed in 2008. It was passed to update the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And just a quick history, what happened is that after the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration began a broad program of electronic surveillance, which involved the communications of U.S. citizens. And the New York Times reported on it in 2005. And at that point, the Bush administration tried to put it under the authority of and oversight of a secret court that oversees FISA. And the court ended up ruling that there was inconsistencies in the law, which forced Congress to come back and update the FISA Act itself. And that was what was updated in the 2008 law. And that's what expires at the end of this year. So members of Congress are now considering the reauthorization of it.
How does the House bill compare with that put forward by the Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Dianne Feinstein of California?
Well, there's differences over in the Senate in terms of how long they want to do the extension for. The House bill would extend the authorities until the end of 2017. The Senate has two competing bills. There's a bill from the Senate Intelligence Committee which would extend the authorities until 2017. But then there's a competing bill from the Senate Judiciary Committee which would extend it until 2015. And the Judiciary Committee also has additional provisions in there to ensure that the constitutional rights of U.S. citizens are being protected. Now, there's still divisions among senators over exactly what should be in the bill, and that's where the center of gravity is going to shift now over to the Senate. And the administration, the Obama administration, has said that this is their top legislative priority. And so following, within the next several weeks, heading into December, there's going to be backroom negotiations between the administration and senators to try and work out a deal. Right now, Senator Wyden from Oregon actually has a hold on the Senate bill.
What's behind his hold on the bill, and is there any indication he's going to let go?
He has two primary concerns, and there are indications that he will let go if he can amend the bill. The main primary concern for him is that he wants to know, along with other senators, how many Americans have had their communications monitored under this law. The administration, pretty incredibly, says that it cannot provide that figure. It cannot tell senators, even in a classified setting, how many Americans have had their communications reviewed under the law. So Senator Wyden wants to put in a provision into the bill that would require the administration to provide just a rough ballpark estimate. Is it 100? Is it 1,000, 10,000, whatever it is? And he also wants to add a provision that would prevent the administration from looking at the communications of U.S. citizens in order to target U.S. citizens without a warrant. And so he says if he can get assurances that his amendments will be considered, he'll lift his hold.
Chris Strom of Bloomberg News covering the renewal of FISA. Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Congressional Quarterly writes that Obama administration intelligence officials have said renewing the FISA surveillance provisions is their top legislative priority this year, and the House is voting on final passage of that right now. Moving back to the story of the day in Washington and the murder of the 4 American diplomats in the U.S. consulate in Libya yesterday, some reaction from Capitol Hill. In a written statement, Republican Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma said the timing of this on the 11th anniversary of 9/11 is more than just coincidence. Sadly, America has suffered as a result of President Obama's failure to lead and his failed foreign policy of appeasement and apology. Senator Inhofe. While Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said on the Senate floor, among the things we can all agree on in Washington is that attacks on the U.S. and its representatives will be met with resolve, and that America's presence and defense of our national interests across the globe will not be deterred by the acts of violent extremists. In the White House Rose Garden today, President Obama said justice will be done for the U.S. officials killed in Libya.
And civilians work tirelessly to advance the interests and values of our nation. Often they are away from their families. Sometimes they brave great danger. Yesterday, 4 of these extraordinary Americans were killed in an attack on our diplomatic post in Benghazi. Among those killed was our ambassador, Chris Stevens, as well as Foreign Service Officer Sean Smith. We are still notifying the families of the others who were killed. And today the American people stand united in holding the families of the 4 Americans in our thoughts and in our prayers. The United States condemns in the strongest terms this outrageous and shocking attack. We're working with the government of Libya to secure our diplomats. I've also directed my administration to increase our security at diplomatic posts around the world. And make no mistake, we will work with the Libyan government to bring to justice the killers who attacked our people. Since our founding, the United States has been a nation that respects all faiths. We reject all efforts to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. But there is absolutely no justification to this type of senseless violence. None. The world must stand together to unequivocally reject these brutal acts. Already, many Libyans have joined us in doing so, and this attack will not break the bonds between the United States and Libya. Libyan security personnel fought back against the attackers alongside Americans. Libyans helped some of our diplomats find safety, and they carried Ambassador Stevens' body to the hospital, where we tragically learned that he had died. It's especially tragic that Chris Stevens died in Benghazi because it is a city that he helped to save. At the height of the Libyan revolution, Chris led our diplomatic post in Benghazi. With characteristic skill, courage, and resolve, he built partnerships with Libyan revolutionaries and helped them as they planned to build a new Libya. When the Gaddafi regime came to an end, Chris was there to serve as our ambassador to the new Libya, and he worked tirelessly to support this young democracy, and I think both Secretary Clinton and I relied deeply on his knowledge of the situation on the ground there. He was a role model to all who worked with him and to the young diplomats who aspire to walk in his footsteps. Along with his colleagues, Chris died in a country that is still striving to emerge from the recent experience of war. Today, the loss of these 4 Americans is fresh, but our memories of them linger on. I have no doubt that their legacy will live on through the work that they did far from our shores and in the hearts of those who love them back home. Of course, yesterday was already a painful day for our nation as we marked the solemn memory of the 9/11 attacks. We mourned with the families who were lost on that day. I visited the graves of troops who made the ultimate sacrifice in Iraq and Afghanistan at the hallowed grounds of Arlington Cemetery and had the opportunity to say thank you and visit some of our wounded warriors at Walter Reed. And then last night we learned the news of this attack in Benghazi. As Americans, let us never, ever forget that our freedom is only sustained because there are people who are willing to fight for it, to stand up for it, and in some cases lay down their lives for it. Our country is only as strong as the character of our people and the service of those, both civilian and military, who represent us around the globe. No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation, alter that character, or eclipse the light of the values that we stand for. Today we mourn for more Americans who represent the very best of the United States of America. We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act, and make no mistake, justice will be done. But we also know that the lives these Americans led stand in stark contrast to those of their attackers. These 4 Americans stood up for freedom and human dignity. They should give every American great pride in the country that they served, and the hope that our flag represents to people around the globe who also yearn to live in freedom and with dignity. We grieve with their families, but let us carry on their memory, and let us continue their work of seeking a stronger America and a better world for all of our children. Thank you. May God bless the memory of those we lost, and may God bless the United States of America.
Mr. President, was this an act of war?
Relationship with Libya moving forward?
Are you still able to script the last ready? Thanks, Chip.
And now we go to Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney from earlier today. He condemned the attacks on the U.S. consulate in Libya, calling them outrageous and disgusting. He also criticized President Obama and that his administration gave mixed signals in its response. The former governor made the comments from his campaign office in Jacksonville, Florida.
Good morning. It's outrageous. It's disgusting. It breaks the hearts of all of us who think of these people who have served during their lives the cause of freedom and justice and honor. We mourn their loss and join together in prayer that the Spirit of the Almighty might comfort the families of those who have been so brutally slain. 4 diplomats lost their life, including the U.S. Ambassador, J. Christopher Stevens, in the attack on our embassy at Benghazi, Libya. And of course, with these words, I extend my condolences to the grieving loved ones who have left behind as a result of these who have lost their lives in the service of our nation. And I know that the people across America are grateful for their service, and we mourn their sacrifice. America will not tolerate attacks against our citizens and against our embassies. We'll defend also our constitutional rights of speech and assembly and religion. We have confidence in our cause in America. We respect our Constitution. We stand for the principles our Constitution protects. We encourage other nations to understand and respect the principles of our Constitution, because we recognize that these principles are the ultimate source of freedom for individuals around the world. I also believe the administration was wrong to stand by a statement sympathizing with those who had breached our embassy in Egypt, instead of condemning their actions. It's never too early for the United States government to condemn attacks on Americans and to defend our values. The White House distanced itself last night from the statement, saying it wasn't cleared by Washington, and that reflects the mixed signals they're sending to the world. The attacks in Libya and Egypt underscore that the world remains a dangerous place and that American leadership is still sorely needed. In the face of this violence, America cannot shrink from the responsibility to lead. American leadership is necessary to ensure that events in the region don't spin out of control. We cannot hesitate to use our influence in the region to support those who share our values and our interests. Over the last several years, we've stood witness to an Arab Spring that presents an opportunity for a more peaceful and prosperous region, but it also poses the potential for peril if the forces of extremism and violence are allowed to control the course of events. We must strive to ensure that the Arab Spring does not become an Arab winter. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Steve?
The statement you referred to was a very toughly worded statement last night. Do you regret the tone at all, given what we know now?
The embassy in Cairo put out a statement after their grounds had been breached. Protesters were inside the grounds. They reiterated that statement after the breach. I think it's a terrible course for America to stand in apology for our values. That instead, when our grounds are being attacked and being breached, that the first response of the United States must be outrage at the breach of the sovereignty of our nation. And apology for America's values is never the right course.
Governor Romney, do you think, though, coming so soon after the events really had unfolded overnight was appropriate to be weighing in on this as this crisis is unfolding in real time?
The White House also issued a statement saying it tried to distance itself from those comments and said they were not reflecting of their views. I had the exact same reaction. These views were inappropriate. They were the wrong course to take. When our embassy has been breached by protesters, the first response should not be to say, yes, we stand by our comments that suggest that there's something wrong with the right of free speech.
What did the White House do wrong then, Governor Romney, if they put out a statement saying they disagreed with it?
Their administration spoke. The President takes responsibility not just for the words that come from his mouth, but also from the words that come from his ambassadors, from his administration, from his embassies, from his State Department. They clearly sent mixed messages to the world, and the statement that came from the administration, and the embassy is the administration. The statement that came from the administration was a statement which is akin to apology, and I think was a severe miscalculation.
Governor, when you talk about mixed signals, the world is watching. Isn't this itself a mixed signal when you criticize the administration at a time that Americans are being killed? Shouldn't politics stop for this?
We have a campaign for presidency of the United States and are speaking about the different courses we would each take with regards to the challenges that the world faces. The President and I, for instance, have differences of opinion with regards to Israel and our policies there, with regards to Iran, with regards to Afghanistan, with regards to Syria. We have many places of distinction and differences. We join together in the condemnation of the attacks on American embassies and the loss of American life, and join in the sympathy for these people. But it's also important for me, just as it was for the White House last night, by the way, to say that the statements were inappropriate. And in my view, a disgraceful statement on the part of our administration to apologize for American values.
Governor, some people have said that you jumped the gun a little in putting that statement out last night and that you should have waited until more details were available. Do you regret having that statement come out so early before we learned about all of the things that were happening?
I don't think we ever hesitate when we see something which is a violation of our principles. We express immediately when we feel that the President and his administration have done something which is inconsistent with the principles of America. Simply put, having an embassy which has been breached and has protesters on its grounds, having violated the sovereignty of the United States, having that embassy reiterate a statement effectively apologizing for the right of free speech is not the right course for an administration.
If you had known last night that the ambassador had died, and obviously I'm gathering you did not know.
Well, that came later.
That's right. If you had known that the ambassador had died,
I'm not going to take hypotheticals about what would have been known one and so forth. We responded last night to the events that happened in Egypt.
Governor Romney, one of your precise reasons for running is your economic know-how and your private sector experience. But now that foreign policy and the situation in the Middle East has been thrust into the presidential campaign, can you talk about why specifically you think you're better qualified than President Obama to handle these issues?
I think President Obama has demonstrated a lack of clarity as to a foreign policy. My foreign policy has three fundamental branches. First, confidence in our cause. A recognition that the principles America was based upon are not something we shrink from or apologize for, that we stand for those principles. The second is clarity in our purpose, which is that when we have a foreign policy objective, we describe it honestly and clearly to the American people, to Congress, and to the people of the world. And number three is resolve in our might, that in those rare circumstances where we decide it's essential for us to apply military might, that we do so with overwhelming force, that we do so in the clarity of a mission, understanding the nature of the U.S. Interest involved, understanding when the mission would be complete, what will be left when it is, what will be left behind us when that mission has been terminated. These elements, I believe, are essential to our foreign policy, and I haven't seen them from the President. As I've watched over the past 3.5 years, the President has had some successes. He's had some failures. It's a hit or miss approach, but it has not been based upon sound foreign policy.
How specifically, Governor Romney, would President Romney have handled this situation differently than President Obama did? You spoke out before midnight when all the facts weren't known. How would you have handled this differently than the President did?
I spoke out when the key fact that I referred to was known, which was that the Embassy of the United States issued what appeared to be an apology for American principles. That was a mistake. And I believe that when a mistake is made of that significance, you speak out.
And so how would you have handled it?
Governor Romney.
Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman John Kerry responded to Mr. Romney's comments, criticizing the White House's response to what happened in Libya, saying, "This is one of those moments when Americans must unite as Americans." He said, "It is exactly the wrong time to throw political punches." We have other events from today talking about Libya, including Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. You can find that in our video library at cspan.org. Right now, the House wrapping up a vote on FISA, electronic surveillance, extending that for another 5 years.
On this vote, the yeas are 301 and the nays are 118. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is on the vote on the motion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Turner, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3857 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill. Union Calendar number 351, H.R. 3857, a bill to amend the implementing recommendations of the 9/11 Commission Act of 2007 to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to include as an eligible use the sustainment of specialized operational teams used by local law enforcement under the Transit Security Grant Program and for other purposes. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House voting now on a bill that dealing with public transit security, authorizing $400 million for a grant program. Politico writes that one of the 3 credit rating agencies, Moody's Investor Services, warned that it may downgrade the country's credit rating if Congress and President Obama cannot reach a deal on taxes and spending during the 6 weeks following the election. And today, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid called for a new round of negotiations aimed at a pre-election agreement on how to alter the automatic spending cuts scheduled to begin in January. Congressional Quarterly writes that this comes after House Speaker John Boehner said yesterday that he does not expect an agreement to head off the spending cuts, which Republicans have attempted to delay or alter in order to reduce the impact on the Pentagon.
yeas are 3. On this vote, the yeas are 354, nays are 62.
Mr. Israel.
Steve, you owe me one.
Mr. Israel votes aye. Mr. Cleaver. Off no on aye for Mr. Cleaver.
Okay. On this vote, the yeas are 355, the nays are 62. Recorded two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Bono Mack, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5865, on which the yeas and nays are ordered as amended. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5865, a bill to promote the growth and competitiveness of American manufacturing.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The last vote of the day on a bill that would create an American Manufacturing Board. Earlier today, the House passed a bill that would swap federal land for about 90,000 acres of state-owned land in the Boundary Waters Canoe area. And tomorrow, the House will debate and vote on another short-term spending bill that would fund the federal government through March of next year. Later on tonight, we hope to bring you live coverage of President Obama campaigning in Las Vegas at 9:10 p.m. Eastern. We could have that here on C-SPAN or on C-SPAN 2, depending on the schedules in the House and the Senate.
On this vote, the yeas are 337, the nays are 77. Two-thirds being in the affirmative,
Mr. Cleaver.
Votes aye.
Mr. Cleaver votes aye. Ms. Burkle.
Yeah, we're fighting. Votes aye.
Ms. Burkle votes aye.
Closed.
what's he doing?
One in the wrong building. Never mind. We're closed.
On this vote, the yeas are 339, the nays are 77. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk 2 privileged reports from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 778, resolution providing for consideration of the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 117, making continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2013 and for other purposes, and providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 6365 to amend the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985 to replace the sequester established by the Budget Control Act of 2011. Report to accompany House Resolution 779, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 6213 to limit further taxpayer exposure from the Loan Guarantee Program established under Title 17 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005 and providing for consideration of motions to suspend the rules.
Refer to the House calendar and ordered printed. Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. This is to notify you formally, pursuant to Rule 8 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, that I have been served with a subpoena issued by the Chesterfield, Virginia General District Court, Civil, for hearing testimony. After consultation with the Office of General Counsel, I have determined that compliance with the subpoena is not consistent with the privileges and rights of the House. Signed sincerely, C.J. Johnson, Constituent Services Representative.
The Chair will entertain requests for 1-minute speeches.
Now, the Chair will now recognize 1-minute speeches. What purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection.
Speaker, the House is
In order. House be in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize Lance T. Shaner of Center County, Pennsylvania. This week, on September 13th, 2012, Lance will be honored as the 2012 recipient of the Navy League of Central Pennsylvania Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy's Distinguished Citizen Award. The Navy League of Central Pennsylvania is an organization dedicated to enhance public awareness of the missions and challenges facing today's armed forces, as well as advocating for the well-being of the men and women who serve. The Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy Distinguished Citizen Award is given to a non-active duty person who has character, distinguished military or civilian service, and stature draw a wholesome comparison to the qualities for which the Navy League of Central Pennsylvania Council strives to promote. Lance Shaner, chairman of the Shaner Group, is known throughout Central Pennsylvania for his various community efforts, which include the Chamber of Business and Industry of Center County, United Way, Center Volunteers of Medicine, the Boy Scouts of America, the YMCA, Mount Nittany Medical Center, and many other programs that benefit our community. I want to thank Lance Shaner for his service to our community, and I congratulate him on this distinguished award, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise? Without objection.
Recently, the Chinese Consul General sent a letter to the mayor of Corvallis, a small city in my district, and the letter was followed up by personal visits by the Vice Consul and the Deputy Consul General. Now, we always welcome visitors, but under these circumstances, we have some concerns. They're trying to pressure the mayor of the city of Corvallis to compel a local businessman to remove a mural dedicated to Free Tibet and Taiwan independence from his downtown building. It was characterized by the local newspaper as a shakedown because the original letter broadly hinted that it might be in Corvallis' best interest economically to cooperate with the request. I am shocked and appalled that apparently Chinese professional diplomats have failed to read the Constitution of the United States of America before traveling here to represent their country. This represents the basis of our representative democracy, our freedom of speech, and our rights, and it will not be bullied by China or any other overseas interest. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
No one else? No further. The chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leaves of absence requested for Mr. Cicilline of Rhode Island for September 10th and 11th. Mr. Culberson of Texas for today until 3:30 p.m.
Without objection, the requests are granted. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Lipinski, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Speaker, ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on the subject of my special order honoring Congressman Jerry Costello's distinguished service in Congress.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a great legislator and a close personal friend, Congressman Jerry Costello, who will retire from the House of Representatives at the end of this 112th Congress. Jerry has long been known as one of the most effective and well-liked members of Congress since he took office in 1988. It is my honor to lead this special order in his honor. I knew Jerry before I was elected to Congress in 2004, and I had the privilege of working in his congressional office in the mid-1990s. Today, we serve together on 2 House committees, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Jerry has been an important mentor to me throughout my time here. I've always been impressed with his work on behalf of his constituents and his work to improve America's transportation network. He is someone who is here to get things done, and he knows how to do it. His retirement from this body is a loss to us all. Congress will not be the same without Jerry, and I know we would all benefit if we had more colleagues like him. There are a number of members on both sides of the aisle who want to speak, so I will continue with the rest of my speech later if we have time. But right now I want to recognize the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. We could devote much more than an hour to Jerry Costello's career in Congress. I've sat next to Jerry on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee for more than 2 decades. And there is no more knowledgeable, dedicated advocate in the United States Congress, most recently on aviation issues, but across the board on infrastructure issues, which underlie our economy and our productivity and our growth than Jerry Costello. His work has been phenomenal. He has done more than I could have imagined in his period of time, and we will miss him. I will, at this point, extend my remarks further in my congratulations to him upon a well and hard-earned retirement. With that, I would yield my time back to the gentleman.
Are you ready?
Thank you.
I yield to the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I apologize to my good friends, but this has to be a two-way street, bipartisan, because I do believe that Jerry was an example of the Congress that I knew and loved, and where we worked together to solve problems. And Jerry was very good at that. I, as chairman of the Transportation Committee, we worked through with Jim Oberstar, and we never had an adversarial vote in that whole period of time, because he did believe in bipartisanship to build transportation not only in his district, for the nation as a whole. And Jerry was a gentleman at all times, and sometimes I get a little excited. He would remind me as the chairman maybe I could be a little bit more kinder, and I told him that it doesn't always work. It worked for Jerry, and I do respect his capabilities not only serving his district, but making sure that this nation had a transportation system in place that would serve this whole nation. I look forward to Jerry's retirement. In a sense, I'm sure he'll do good and great things after this, but we will miss his time in Congress, and as a Republican, I definitely will miss him. And I do thank Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Young. I just want to recognize now a gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my friend from Illinois, Mr. Lipinski, for yielding to me. When I think of Jerry Costello, I think of the fact that those of us in Illinois sort of had two go-to members of the Transportation Committee for many years. Bill Lipinski, who is the congressman's father, and Jerry Costello. We used to call them the Gold Dust Twins. And one of the reasons is because they had such a great relationship and worked cooperatively to make sure that our state, the state of Illinois, the home of Abraham Lincoln, was well taken care of in terms of infrastructure, but they also worked for the entire country. I had an opportunity to travel with Jerry and his wonderful wife a number of times, and of course she is a delightful lady who's a higher education administrator, the president of a community college, and other members of their family are engaged in public service as well as what they do privately. I've never known a more congenial member of this body or any other legislative body that I've served in than Jerry Costello. I think he's actually too young to retire, and so I've got a feeling that he's got some other things on his mind, some other things that he's going to do, and I think he'll still be fishing down in the East St. Louis area and making sure that the catfish and the other creatures out there give up their habitat and become members of the landed gentry. So Jerry, take care of yourself, have all the fun that you can, but I'm certain that there is something else that you're going to be doing. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Lipinski. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next one to recognize the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Larson.